Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. I am going to discuss with you today a potential connection between the assassin of the Democratic representative from Minnesota and her husband, and the attempted assassination of the senator and his wife that took place over the last 36 hours. And the chap Vance Boelter might well have a connection to Russia. That sounds conspiratorial and ridiculous. But actually, when you follow some of the threads that are available to us, then it leads back to, interestingly, Russia via Romania. What am I talking about? Well, let's rewind a little bit in terms of what happened in Romania before we return to Minnesota. If you remember, the presidential election in Romania was entirely controversial in its first iteration. So the first round, before it was eventually annulled, had a chap called Calin Georgescu, who came from nowhere to suddenly take first place in that first round. So here we have Sky News reporting on it when it happened back in November 2024. Romania in shock after far-right candidate wins first round of presidential election. He won the runoff, or he entered the runoff that would have been with another person, so the two people are left, and he won 23% of the vote, coming from nowhere. Like, it wasn't even registered till I think October time. And he was a very controversial figure. Goodness me, we've been through the background of this guy previously. But it was then found out that he declared no payments from abroad, that there were no issues with campaign financing or whatnot. And then it was found out that there had been this huge TikTok campaign, and payment for that appears to have been lacking, and it seems that came from Russia. And so then there were all these indications that Russia had fully interfered with the presidential election, and so the first round was annulled. He was then forbidden from running, and it came to another person who ran against Nicolas, and Nicolas just squeezed out a victory in the end, as everyone coalesced against this Russian influence. Now, when Georgescu was outed as being a bit of a project for the Russians, there were some arrests that were made around that. And if you go back in time and look at someone called Horatiu Potra, you'll see that he was really heavily embroiled in what was going on. He was seen as the Romanian version of Yevgeny Prigozhin being the chef, as he was known, the mercenary leader, the Wagner PMC leader, who eventually met his death in an explosion on an airplane. But he was, for some time, it appeared, Putin's kind of right-hand man. Now, we have your man Horatiu Potra being the Romanian version of Yevgeny Prigozhin, to the point where in December he was arrested in connection with the presidential election and a potential coup. So Horatiu Potra, the head of the Romanian mercenary group operating in Africa and a close associate of Calin Georgescu, has been arrested on suspicion of planning to use firearms, bladed weapons and money to incite mass violence during pro-Georgescu public gatherings. We have here Derek Tanis again saying Horatiu Potra, the very dangerous leader of the Romanian mercenary group active in Africa and one of Georgescu's closest associates, has now openly called Georgescu's fanatical supporters to armed and violent rebellion, and so on and so forth. He was a mercenary just kicked out of the DRC, Republic of Congo, was also the bodyguard for Georgescu, Putin's favourite candidate in Romania. This is what happens when you actually cancel and investigate stolen elections. So this was seen as a bit of a success for the Romanian authorities, who found, the connection to Russia, and one of these people, Horatiu Potra, being at the centre of the issues there. Okay, so that's not particularly controversial. That's all now in the past. what's this got to do with Vance Boelter, who is now known to be the suspect in that assassination? And of course, he had in Minnesota a security firm. That's possibly how he had access to security apparatus, such as, body armor. He made himself up to look just like a policeman, and then actually put a latex mask on, and then got access to these people's houses and shot who he shot. And he had that security car that was done up like a police car with flashing lights and whatnot. So you'd be forgiven for thinking, here's a policeman at my door. And then he ended up shooting the people he shot. Okay. And that was absolutely terrible. But it could be that he at least exists in this ecosystem. Whether he's actually having his strings pulled by Russia is another thing entirely. But there does seem to be a connection between Boelter and Potra at the very least. So, okay, let's go and sort of read one such article, this one by Jim Stewartson, on Boelter here. Political assassinations have begun, and then we've got, unfortunately, we've got the murder of Melissa Hortman and the attempted murder of John Hoffman, and then we had all this information about Vance Boelter that came out from sort of LinkedIn, his own website through a security company, and Facebook before that was taken down. So uniform security, event security services, presidential security patrols, all these things that he was offering. And then you saw his likes on Facebook, and actually some of these were quite zealous religious organizations to do with anti-abortion. Alliance Defending Freedom is a particularly famous one. But here you can see he says CEO of Red Lion Group. Dr. Vance Boelter, EBD, is CEO of Red Lion Group based in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He's also CEO of Praetorian Guard Security Services based in Minnesota. Okay, so you've got what looks to be a fundamentalist Christian, maybe even a Christian nationalist, operating within the DRC as CEO of the Red Lion Group, a private security company there. Now, Jim Stewartson goes on to say the only Red Lion Group operating in Congo is run by Horatiu Potra, a Romanian mercenary who runs a PMC in Congo, who was also in Eric Prince's WhatsApp chats. I'm not too sure about that. So here's a quote here. His hopes were shared by many other off-leash participants, among them Horatiu Potra, a Romanian mercenary who has recently been operating in the mineral-rich, conflict-plagued Democratic Republic of Congo. Quote, the globalists want to control the entire planet, and the only chance to get rid of them is a spark from a great power, the USA, Potra wrote. Surely there will be a strong man like Eric Prince, I presume, who will initiate it. Otherwise, there is no chance of regaining our freedom. If this spark is started, all countries will follow suit. We're waiting for the signal, the spark. Potra is seen as the Prigozhin of Romania, but even more corrupt and incompetent. Below is a picture of Potra's Romeos in Congo. More recently, Potra was Romanian presidential candidate Calin Georgescu's bodyguard. Georgescu was booted from the race after it was determined that he was a Russian asset using TikTok propaganda. Potra had a ticket to Moscow. So, we know that Horatiu Potra, who seemed to be heavily involved with the Red Lion Group in DRC, has connections to Moscow, was going to run away to Moscow, but then he got arrested for the Russian interference into the Romanian election. Eric Prince returns to the DRC, so he amid US mineral security push. Just finding out who Eric Prince was. He's actually brother of Betsy DeVos, the former US Secretary of Education. He was former Navy SEAL officer, American businessman, and founder of the controversial private military company Blackwater. You hear about quite often. His controversies have involved Blackwater and the 2007 Nisour Square massacre, while Prince was CEO of Blackwater. Company contractors were involved in a deadly shooting in Baghdad that killed 17 Iraqi civilians, including children. The incident drew international outrage and led to convictions for several Blackwater employees. Arms trafficking allegations. He was indicted in Austria in 2023 after allegedly violating a United Nations arms embargo, organising a covert operation to supply weapons to Libyan warlord. The operation reportedly involved explosives routed through Austria. Proposal for mass deportation force. A group linked to Prince pitched a $25 billion plan to the Trump administration to create a private civilian army and detention camps to carry out mass deportations of undocumented immigrants. That's pretty topical. The proposal included building temporary camps in the US Army bases and using private aircraft for deportation flights and training of foreign forces. After moving to the UAE, Prince helped organise foreign troops for the Emirati government and was involved in training Somali forces for anti-piracy missions, activities that raised eyebrows due to their murky legal and ethical implications. Okay, so he's somewhat dodgy guy involved with what appears to be Potra here. So yeah, Potra is certainly a dodgy chap, and the links to Vance Boelter appear to be pretty solid. We've got David Heron here who comments on Romanian political stuff. When I read that Vance Boelter ran a mercenary group in the Congo, I immediately thought of Horatiu Potra, a Romanian mercenary leader who also is active in Congo. Turns out they are associated, making Boelter likely a direct Russian agent. Now, the connection between Vance Boelter and Horatiu Potra comes from the article referenced by Jim Stewardson, in which he describes Boelter's background in the Congo, which we've just been looking at. I feel necessary to say, I obviously do not have hard evidence saying Boelter is a Kremlin asset, but the Kremlin connection for Potra is clear, and Boelter appears to be a business associate with Potra, and this is a huge red flag. So one key figure was Horatiu Potra, sometimes described as Georgescu's bodyguard. By the time this article by the time of this article, below this Romanian one, Potra was in hiding in Dubai because police had raided his home and those of many of his associates and turned up weapons, explosives, money, etc. Potra's mercenary group in Congo was called back to Romania in early February, and within a couple of weeks there was a plan afoot for an overthrow of Romania's government, apparently to be staffed by Potra's mercenaries. In December 2024, Romania annulled its presidential election because of the irregularities surrounding Calin Georgescu's candidacy. The government suspected interference from Russia. It took a while for everything to unfold. However, there's a lot of reporting tying Horatiu Potra with Wagner, or to Wagner PMC, which is a Kremlin-connected mercenary group that was also active in the Congo. So does this partnership make Boelter also make him associated with the Kremlin? Well, the investigative group Press One spent 4 months in the Congo studying Horatiu Potra's activities and connections to Prigozhin and therefore Wagner PMC. Let's tie this together. Vance Boelter was a mercenary group leader working in the Congo, associated with a company called Red Lion Group. The only company by that name in Congo is also associated with Horatiu Potra, hence Boelter and Potra are business partners. Here's more on Horatiu Potra's work in the Congo and associating with Prigozhin, so another Romanian article that you can look at. These will be linked below this overall thread. Because I'm closely following Romanian politics, I've heard a lot about Horatiu Potra and Georgescu's connections to Russia that aren't described in Jim Stewartson's article. He describes Potra as being connected to Prigozhin, the former head of Wagner PMC that also operated in the Congo. Romanian outlet Actual 24 documents a connection between Vance Boelter and Horatiu Potra through the Red Lion Group. So here we have a Romanian media outlet actually very explicitly detailing this. The extremist killer from Minnesota links with Georgescu's mercenary Horatiu Potra, what a journalist from the United States discovered. So there you go, the linkage between the two. Although that's predominantly referring to Stewartson's own conclusions there. Now, David Herring continues, okay, that's the Romanian outlet, documents a connection there. By the way, Potra's group in Romania was not the only coup attempt blocked by police and associated with Georgescu. A separate group also sought to overthrow Romania's government. Romanian outlet Libertate reports on a possible connection between Vance Boelter and Horatiu Potra through the Red Line Group, a mercenary organisation in the Congo. So this second Romanian article in Libertate says Vance Boelter's connection with Horatiu Potra, man wanted by FBI for murdering politicians in Minnesota, says he is CEO of Red Lines in Congo. We're going to flip through much of what we've already learnt, and we're going to come down to here connections with influential circles in the mercenary industry. Now, according to recent information, Horatiu Potra is active in the private WhatsApp group Off Leash, created by the controversial Eric Prince. So we just dipped into that. Founder of the private military firm Blackwater. According to some investigations, Potra and Prince share the same ideological and social network. In 2023, there were plans for Latin American mercenaries backed by Prince to fight alongside Potra's contractors in Congo. Although such an agreement has not been concluded, Prince signed a separate contract with the Congolese government in 2025 for logistics and securing mineral resources in another province. Vance Boelter, a CEO with dubious identity. On LinkedIn, Boelter is listed as Dr. Vance Boelter, CEO of our Redline Group and a director of Praetorian Guard Security Services, a Minnesota-based firm that provides residential armed security services. Boelter's profile says he has worked in security situations in Eastern Europe, Africa, and Middle East and North America. He also states that he has collaborated with top companies in the USA, Switzerland, and Japan. However, in a recording that appeared on the X platform, the man with 5 children, Vance Boelter, says that he deals with funeral services and that he went to the Congo to help in agriculture. But of course, that's kind of what you would say if you're a mercenary, right? But much of the information about him is difficult to verify, and his connection with Redline Group raised questions after it was discovered that the only company with this name in Congo is precisely Horatiu Potra's company. So there's no way that you would be saying that you are involved in security operations and whatnot, and that you've done so in Africa and the Middle East and whatnot, and then you'll see a red line and it's not the red line you see a red line in Congo and it's not the red line in Congo that's Horatiu Potra's mercenary group. So it seems to be pretty I think cemented there, that connection. So and of course we know that he had a list of 70 names that was found in his car and a manifesto, and those names might well have included abortion clinics. So he seems to be very committed fundamentalist Christian, so that would make sense there. And the names on that list included Tim Walz, Representative Ilan Omar, so a lot of progressives on that list, all Democrats, I believe, and there seems to be an ideology there, but also a connection at least to Potra and then possibly to Russia in that way. So just to round it off then, Horatiu Potra was seen as Romania's Yevgeny Prigozhin, and Epoch Times of Romania has also connected Horatiu Potra with Vance Boelter through the Red Line Group. So we definitely have a connection, I think. I would put my mortgage on there being a connection between Boelter and Horatiu Potra. Potra clearly has very, very close ties to Russia, was going to run away to Russia, but was arrested for Russian influence in Romania and for his I guess, objective of carrying out a coup in Romania. I think this needs to be investigated. It might end up being nothing. I don't want to start running around shouting about conspiracy theories and whatnot and advocating for them. But there definitely seems to be something here that requires, I think, some further investigation and an interesting connection between the assassin and potentially Russia and certainly Horatiu Potra. Anyway, that's enough from me. Take care. I'll speak to you soon.